Okay, great. So we're recording right now. Hopefully, folks that haven't been able to join us will be able to listen to this recording. I'd like to welcome you to my Becoming an Informed College Consumer webinar. I've subtitled it Beyond the 529 because I think that when a lot of people think about college planning, they think about saving for college and they think about 529 savings plans and they sort of stop there. And I wanted to spread some information that I've gathered recently. And again, I apologize, I'm under the weather, so I hope I don't cough too much. Information that I've gathered recently that I think will be helpful for folks who have children in multiple different stages of their school career. And hopefully, if I don't touch on something that you're wanting to learn about, you can ask a question. So we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself first. I am the principal and financial planner at Inspiration Financial Planning. It's a fee-only financial planning firm I started last year. I'm a career changer, so I've been doing this now for about a year and a half, and I spent the first 15 years of my career in IT in various different companies. I've always been interested in personal finance, and I'm passionate about providing information to folks in a fiduciary capacity, which means I don't sell anything, I don't sell products, financial products, insurance, annuities. I just sell my advice, and I hope that my clients, and I can develop a relationship that lasts a long time. So I wanted to start off with a few statistics. Reading this report, the T. Rowe Price 2016 Parents, Kids, and Money Survey, really got me thinking about college costs because the statistics I'm going to show you were kind of shocking to me. 65% of Gen X parents, those are folks like myself, believe that saving for kids' college education is a higher priority than saving for retirement. Um, this, I can't tell you how unfortunate this is because, as we'll talk about later, saving for retirement should be your first priority, and saving for college education should come after that. But it's clear that a lot of people believe the opposite. 42% of parents lose sleep worrying about college costs, and that's up from 28% in 2014. So, in just a 2-year span of time, significantly more parents are worried about college costs. These are the real kickers. 62% of kids expect their parents to pay for whatever college they want to go to. That means that the kid picks out a college, mom and dad write a check, everybody's happy. And that's unfortunately 61% of parents who say that of those children have parents who say they will not be able to cover the entire cost. So this is me, not really me, but what I imagine is in my head when I hear these things, and it might be in yours as well. So what I'm here to do is to bring light to some of the disconnects you might be facing in your own family with regards to college cost conversations with your children. Stress the importance of having money conversation with your children about college and as early as possible. Even elementary, middle school children are not too young to understand what college costs and how they might, contribute to helping, bring those costs down. I want to give you options and information about planning financially for college, both on the savings end and when you're getting into financial aid and paying for college, and answer your questions. So as I said, if you want to ask questions in the middle of the presentation, go ahead, put them into the chat box, and I will try to answer them, or we can touch on them at the end. So saving for college is something that you do have to fit into your budget. Obviously, there's a lot of demands on your money. Babies, houses, cars, retirement funds, college savings, vacation. And it's really something that you have to think about in context with all of those other expenses. Now, I mentioned retirement earlier, and it's really a balancing act between saving for college and retirement. But I want to stress saving for retirement and how important it is now first, because there aren't options like loans or grants or work study programs for retirement. You may miss out on years of deferred growth, and it's hard to catch up later. If you save for college now, you send your kids to college, they graduate, and then you've only got 5 or 10 years to finish saving for retirement, you've really put yourself behind the 8 ball. And your retirement may last 30 years. College is only going to last hopefully 4, 5, maybe 6. but you don't want to be a burden to your children in those final years of your retirement. And your retirement assets don't hurt financial aid chance. This is one thing I hear a lot from people. If they think that if they save a lot of money for retirement, that they're going to get less financial aid, and that's not true. Financial aid is not harmed by retirement assets. So let's talk a little bit now about the price of college now and why it's so important to save. So these were for last year's figures. A four-year public institution's about $24,000 and a four-year private institution's about $48,000. This includes tuition, fees, room and board, books, transportation, and personal expenses. If you look at how that will grow over time, and 10 years from now, you're looking at a cost for a four-year public institution of almost $40,000 and a four-year private institution of $78,000. And this is based on a 5% college inflation rate. And historically, I'd say over the past 15 years, 20 years or so, college costs have gone up significantly higher than the rate of inflation. I have seen some evidence recently that some of this is starting to slow down. So that's a good thing. But I wouldn't count on it slowing down too much. It's always better to plan and be pleasantly surprised in 10 years rather than be in trouble. So I wanted to make this about the price of college to start. And when you think about paying the price, you have college savings that you've managed to save while your children are growing up. You may be thinking about financial aid. You might be thinking of using some income that you'll have coming in from work or investments, rental properties, whatever in the college years. You might think about other borrowing options, creative cost-cutting measures. Maybe you go down to from two cars to one. You downsize your house. And then maybe you're lucky enough that there's going to be gifts from grandparents to help pay for your child's education. There are a couple things I don't typically recommend, and we'll talk a little bit about those later, or you can ask questions about why. Home equity loans, Parent Plus loans, retirement accounts, and insurance products. I'm a firm believer in using your financial resources in the manner that they're intended. So you use your home to live in, not as a bank account. Parent Plus loans have a lot of downsides to them, and I really believe that if you feel like you need to take out Parent Plus loans, then you probably need to look at the affordability of the school. Retirement accounts for retirement, insurance is really for insurance purposes. So the first thing is you want to talk to your children about money. I think, in my opinion, parents would rather talk about sex than money. A lot of parents don't talk to their children about money. Children don't know how much they've saved or haven't. But would you hand your future 18-year-old $200,000 and say good luck? Because that's essentially what you're doing if you haven't had those conversations with your child before they go to college. And start early. Like I said, kids grasp money concepts earlier than you think. Give them an allowance, suggest they get a job, make them pay for car insurance. All of these things can help children develop sound financial habits before they go to college, because the stakes are higher in college and you really want kids to make their mistakes in high school or younger with money. And be honest and specific about how much you're saving for college or not. If you can't afford to save for college, tell your children. If you're saving a lot of money for college, let them know as well. I just believe that it's important for families to be open about money, because then everybody can make the best decisions that they can based on that information. And share your expectations with them. If you expect them to be able to get scholarships to help pay for college, they need to think about their grades. They need to think about activities. Maybe they need to get a job to help pay for some of college. And you need to let them know whether you expect them to take out loans for school or you don't, and you don't want them to. All of those are things that should be discussed with them. And then help them make smart money decisions. Like I said, they need to make mistakes earlier rather than later. And they really need to understand wants versus needs. So a couple of myths that I think are out there. Kids should go to the best school they can get into. Kids from affluent families can't get financial aid. And high school and college counselors have your child's best interests at heart. I want to share a little bit about the reality of those, is that the first one, as far as going to the best school you can get into, in my experience, the experience that your child has in college matters way more than where they go. There have been studies done by Gallup and Purdue University that have proven this out. Really, people who graduate from school believe that their experience mattered more than the name on the door. And it's great if the name on the door, doesn't lead to a high price tag. Financial aid can include school-specific merit scholarships. And high schools may have a vested interest in where your child goes. It doesn't always, college counselors and high school counselors definitely have their own opinions about where children should go. High school counselors may, feel the need to suggest schools that are going to make the high school look good. College counselors want you to go to their school. So they're going to tell you things that you want to hear, and they're there to sell their school to you. On the financial aid side, if you have high income and you have an affluent family, you can get some financial aid that includes merit scholarships. So those are the realities that might be a little different than the myths that you've experienced before. So it's important to choose a college based on the expected experience, the availability of aid, and your family budget. And affordability is a key. If you can't afford to send your child to a school, it really doesn't make sense to have them apply to that school. You'd rather disappoint them ahead of time than later. So let's talk about cost for a second. Remember, we talked about price before. The price is often not related really to what the cost is. And I'm sure that most of you would rather fill the smaller bucket and not the bigger bucket. So you want to pay what your cost is going to be and not what the sticker price is on the school. So how do you take that from a sticker price down to a cost? One of those ways is thinking about applying for financial aid. And in 2016, there was a big change made to financial aid timelines. So let me go through that really quickly, and it has some impacts on the planning that parents can do for their children's college. So it used to be that when you filed your FAFSA in the second semester of your student's senior year of high school, you had to use your current income tax that you hadn't even filed, those numbers. Well, this year they decided to basically roll that back a year. So the 2015 income tax return was used this year for financial aid applications in 2016, and the timeline was actually moved back to October 1st instead of January 1st. So the good thing is that your tax returns are not they're final now. You don't have to estimate numbers like you used to have to do. And also you can get started on getting your financial aid applications done starting in October, which is great. So for the first FAFSA for a person who's a senior in high school today, like I said, they would have used the 2015 income tax return. And the key for that is that the income was actually earned during the second semester of their sophomore year and the first semester of their junior year in high school. So that was like a year and a half ago. And they're not going to be actually getting aid that corresponds to that until the 2017-2018 school year. And then the assets that you apply in the financial aid form are the assets when you complete the FAFSA. So they're current assets. So you have a wide range of financial timeline here. And if you look at that on the back end, when your child is senior in 2020 and 2021, they would be completing the final FAFSA in their junior year in October, again with the current assets of your family as of that time, and they would be using the 2018 income tax return. And that's the second semester of the freshman year, first semester of sophomore year income. Now, the reason that these two dates are important. For parents, you need to plan earlier. So if you have the ability to affect your income and earn less or more in certain years based on the fact that you own a business, or you can move bonus money into a certain year, you need to plan earlier. Because if you look back here, instead of being the income for second semester junior year, first semester senior year of high school, it's a year earlier. So you need to plan a year earlier than you used to. Now, on the good side of things, for grandparents, they can give earlier. Now, grandparents typically, if they have 529 accounts they've opened for students, or they're giving cash, that cash counts as income for the student, and that affects their financial aid. Well, now that starting in the second year or the second semester of sophomore year, that semester no longer counts in a financial aid application. Grandparents can give earlier. So like I said, they can give starting in the second semester of sophomore year, and it doesn't affect financial aid. And then the other thing to think about is the timing of multiple children and how your estimated family contribution is discounted for each child. So I want to talk a little bit about how need is determined. There's two different methodologies that schools use. Probably around 300 of them use the second methodology, and the rest of them use the free methodology. The federal methodology is the FAFSA, and you can fill out that form. You put in the schools that you're interested in applying to, and it's all sent automatically to the school, and they calculate the need, and it's a set calculation, and it would be the same for every school. For the institutional methodology, the schools that use it, it's not free. You have to pay for each school that you want it sent to. There's hundreds of optional questions. They can pick and choose which of those optional questions that they use. So every school's calculation of your financial need could be different. They may count home equity, they might not. And they may require information from the non-custodial parent. Typically, the FAFSA only requires information from the custodial parent, and that's typically a good thing. But when schools ask for both parents, they really want both parents to be able to contribute. So the FAFSA starts with your income, your assets, and your family information. The school uses the federal or institutional methodology. You come out with an expected family contribution, which is the EFC, and that's what they expect you to be able to pay. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you can pay. And then the cost of college minus the EFC equals the financial need. So that's how a school determines whether or not you have financial need. So another question I get a lot is, should I move assets around to make my financial aid, chances better? The bottom line is that there's not a whole lot you can do. The parents' assets are counted at 5.6%. So if they had $10,000 in savings on the time that they filled out the FAFSA, they would be expected to put $560 of that into paying for college. Now on the child side, it's a little heavier allocation. It's 20% of assets. So if a child has $10,000 in savings, they would expect to be putting $2,000 of an expected contribution into paying for college. So it is clear that having assets in the parent's name are better from a financial aid perspective than having assets in a child's name. That's why typically, uniform transfers to minors accounts, UPMA accounts, are harmful for children because they're in their names and they're counted more heavily in financial aid. And we'll talk about that a little later. So I wanted to come up with a few examples here. I used the FAFSA forecaster at the government's FAFSA website to show a little bit of the difference between how income, assets for both parents and students interplay with each other. So my first example is a high income, low asset family where they have an income of $250,000, they have low assets of $50,000, and this is not retirement assets. When I talk about assets here, this is literally money in savings accounts, checking accounts, just accounts that you have access to today, not retirement accounts. Low student income and no student assets. The estimated family contribution is $65,000. Income is the highest weighted piece of this formula. So the more income you have, the more you're expected to contribute. Now let's jump over to the third column where I say low income, relatively speaking, of $100,000, higher assets of $575,000, Again, student income is the same, and you can see the EFC is almost $18,000 lower, and that's because of the difference in the income. Now, if the students have assets, you're going to, like I said, it's going to be counted 20% of that. So if you go from the third column to the fourth column, you would increase the EFC by 20,000. So again, student assets are harmful for financial aid. Parent assets, not so much. Parent income, very important. And then multiple children it's about half if you have two children in school at the same time, half for each child. So if you take that 33,000 and you multiply it by 2, you're actually paying a little bit more, or you're expected to pay a little bit more than if you only had one child in there. And for 3 children, it's about a third. Okay, so a lot of people think that, oh, I'm just going to apply for financial aid. The school will give me everything that I qualify for, and I'll be fine. And that's unfortunately not the case. It used to be back when I went to college that if you had a financial need of $20,000, the school would cover that with loans, grants, work study, and it'd be covered 100%. And today that's not the case. So I want to caution people not to rely too heavily on financial aid, but to apply anyway, because many schools won't give out merit aid that's non-need based if you haven't applied for financial aid. And for many schools, student loans are making up the largest percentage of the typical aid package. And that's really not aid. It's money that you have to pay back. And there is a student loan crisis in this country with too many people borrowing too much. My typical rule of thumb is not to borrow more in student loans than your first year's salary when you graduate from school. So if you're going to make $35,000 when you graduate, if you get a job, then you shouldn't borrow more than $35,000. That's a rule of thumb, and typically you have about $100 to $110 worth of payments for every $10,000 you've borrowed. So obviously the key to that is getting a job. So you want to make sure you look at graduation rates and you want to look at employment rates for the schools that you're looking for. So like I said, the loans are typically up to 50%. Grants and scholarships could be up to 15%, and then work study job varies. The key to understanding financial aid is make sure you know whether it's for 1 year or 4 years, whether or not you have to pay it back, or whether you have to work for it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the two different kinds of aids and what kinds of schools tend to give out that kind of aid. So for need-based aid, the highly selective schools, typically like the Ivy League schools, for those of us in Chicagoland, Northwestern, University of Chicago, if you show financial need and you get into the school, they will typically cover 100% of it. University of Chicago is actually part of a consortium that covers 100% of your need without even including loans. So typically, if you get into a highly selective school and you show financial need, they will cover it. Now, merit side, highly selective schools may or may not give out tuition discounts or merit aid or scholarships because of the fact that they're highly selective. They don't need to attract people with their aid. So then the next sort of type of institution is the large state schools and the public schools. They typically don't give any need-based aid. I've run through the University of Illinois net price calculator for a typical family that I help out, and they give no need-based aid. The merit aid, sorry, we'll stick with the need-based aid over here. The second tier public institutions, such as like a Northern Illinois, may give need-based aid. It depends on those, the typical institution. If they're public institutions, recently they've been getting squeezed with their budgets. So the need-based aid is affected by that. And then a mid-sized private institution like a DePaul, they may give you some need-based aid. Small private colleges also may give need-based aid, anywhere from 80% to 100%. So those are good options. Now, for merit aid and the large state public schools, They typically don't give any merit aid either. Again, they have a lot of people applying. They have discounted tuition for their in-state students, and unless they're trying to attract out-of-state students, they're not going to give you aid. The second tier public institution, again, may be giving some merit aid. The mid-sized private school might be giving some aid. And then here's where the small private schools really shine, because they have the ability to give out their endowment funds in a way that they see fit. So if they want students that are from a particular region of the country, they'll give merit scholarships or tuition discounts to them. If they want people from a particular background or with a particular skill or interested in particular activities, they have the ability to be very selective in the aid that they give out. So then let's now go to loans. A lot of people think that just taking out a lot of loans and paying for school is good debt. And student loan debt has been talked about as good debt for a long, long time. And I think that perception is finally changing. So let's talk about student options first. Many times when you get a financial aid award letter, there'll be federal or private loans potentially listed. The federal loans are capped at a certain amount that you can borrow each year. The private loans are not. They require a cosigner, which typically means a parent. And some of the options that you get with federal loans are based on financial need. The subsidized loans, where they pay your interest while you're in school. Some of them don't. Some have deferred interest, some don't. And like I said, there's borrowing limits for federal loans. It's around $30,000 for an undergraduate dependent student. So let's switch over to parent loans here. There are both federal PLUS loans and private loans available. The interest rates vary, but they're definitely higher than the federal student loan options. And the payment options vary as well. A lot of times parents have to start paying on the loans that they've borrowed for their child's education much sooner than the students have to start paying on their own loans. And there are less protections for parents. I really don't recommend Parent Plus loans or parent borrowing for students to go to school in general. It's just, it tells me there's something else going on if the parent feels like they need to borrow to send their child to school. And I typically recommend other ways to help bring those costs down. Okay, so now we'll sort of switch gears and we'll start talking about, well, if you're not going to get financial aid and you shouldn't borrow money, well, how do you pay for college? And a lot of people start very early, putting money away for their children instead of doing their retirement, which, as I've said, I don't recommend. But there's a lot of different options that are preferred options for saving for college. A couple of these that we'll talk about are 529 plans, Coverdell Education Savings Accounts, which a lot of people don't know about, U.S. savings bonds. These are the custodial accounts, the UGMA and UTMA accounts that I mentioned earlier, and then just regular investments like mutual funds and stocks. So if you have a savings goal, if we look back and we think about how much the price of some colleges are, let's just say you want to pay $25,000 a year for your child's college, you're going to have to save a lot of money. You're going to have to save $500 a month for more than 10 years in order to get you to $100,000. But obviously, starting small is better than not doing it at all. If you save $100 a month for 15 years, you'll get $30,000 by the end of that 15 years. And so it definitely is doable if you are able to let your savings compound over time and earn, investment returns that will help you reach your goal. So the first college savings option, the most widely well-known and sort of the beyond piece of this was the 529 plan. And there's two different flavors of 529 plans. There's the college savings plan, and then there's the prepaid tuition plan. So the college savings plan is the one that most people are most familiar with. It's offered by there's one or more offered by every state. You can join any plan. A lot of people think that you have to join the plan of your own state, and that's not true. You can join any plan that you want to. And your contributions go into your own individual account, and they are invested in the plan investment portfolios you select. The returns, however, are not guaranteed. So many of the plans have options where you can choose investments that get more conservative over time. So that means that when your child is young, when they're, say, in elementary school, they're a little bit more aggressive and you might be able to earn some more return. But then as they get closer to being in college, maybe when they're in high school, their account becomes more conservative. On the other hand, the prepaid tuition plan, this is typically offered by states and private colleges, and you're limited to the plan of your own state. So if you join Illinois' prepaid tuition plan, you are prepaying tuition for colleges in Illinois. So it's a little bit more restrictive. And what happens is that money is pooled with all of the other people that are investing in the plan, and you're given a certain rate of return. So it's basically like you're buying tuition ahead of time. So you say your child wants to go to University of Illinois, you want to prepay the tuition today, you pay that money, and then by the time your child is ready to go to school, it's earned enough, say that, whether it's that 5% of that rate of inflation that cost has gone up, you've earned enough that it will go ahead and pay for that. So it's typically guaranteed. All right, so what are the advantages of the 529 plan? There are several of them. Anyone can open an account. You don't need to be a parent. You can open one for a friend. You can open one for a grandchild. You can open one for yourself. You can open one for your parent. And there are there are high maximum contribution limits. I think Illinois right now is around $300,000 that you can put in there, which is great. You control the account assets, and you can get professional money management, but you don't have to. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the earnings that your 529 plan investments have are tax-free from federal taxes as long as you use them for qualified educational expenses. So the disadvantages: your returns might not keep pace with college inflation. So if your account is too conservative and college costs are going up 5% every year, you might not be able to pay for the college that you thought you would be able to pay for. They are restricted as far as what you can invest in, and there's varying flexibility on changing investment choices, which means you can maybe change them once or twice a year, and that's it. The prepaid tuition plan disadvantages: you might have limited college choices. Say if your child doesn't want to go to a school in Illinois, then you're kind of in trouble, and with the way Illinois' finances are going, they might not be able to provide those guaranteed returns. And so there's a little bit of uncertainty with that plan. And with both of them, if you don't use them for college expenses, you have an income tax that you have to pay plus a penalty. And then there's also fees and expenses with each type of plan. And so that brings me back to the money management piece of this and how the fees are considered. There's two different kinds of 529 plans. There's ones that are sold by financial advisors, and there's ones that are sold directly online. And the difference between them is that the advisor-sold plans almost always have higher fees. And the reason that is because you're paying for advice, and you just may not know it. So if you do have an advisor-sold 529 plan, make sure that your advisor is giving you the advice you need. Make sure they're helping you pick the investments. Make sure they're helping you change the investments if you need to. Make sure they're doing the work that you're paying them for. Direct sold plans have lower fees, but you still need to then choose an investment option. And the option you choose may have different fees embedded within it. But The importance of fees I can't overstate, because there's the difference between a 0.18% fee and a 1.25% fee over 10 years on a $10,000 investment. It's almost $1,200. So it's a big difference. Okay, so the next college savings option that we'll discuss are the Coverdale Education Savings Accounts. Now, these are a tax-advantaged savings vehicle with a maximum contribution of $2,000 per year. And when you see that small amount, you'll think to yourself, well, what's the point? Unfortunately, these limits haven't kept pace with the pace of college tuition. And in addition, these particular accounts can be used for elementary, secondary, and college expenses. So you could be using them for private school tuition before your child actually goes to college. You have complete investment control. You just go to a bank, you say, I want to open a Coverdale Education Savings account. You have federal tax-free earnings, which is the benefit. But the downside is they're only available to people below certain income levels, which is, I think, about $120,000 at this point. And then withdrawals used for non-educational purposes, like the 529s, are also subject to income tax and penalties. Okay, so you might be interested in opening one of these accounts if you have less than $2,000 to invest. If you don't have a lot of money, this is a great account for you. You want complete investment control, you want to use it before college, and then you meet the income limits. Those are the 4 criteria. The next option is for savings are the U.S. savings bonds, Series E and I. And this is also where interest on these bonds are exempt from federal income tax if the income limits are met. If you are above these income limits, you will pay tax on them. The interest is always exempt from state tax, so that's good. The great thing about these is that the principal investment is guaranteed. You're not going to lose money. But and then the Series I bonds offer inflation protection, and they're very flexible. But the problem is they may not keep pace with the pace of college tuition inflation. And they're easy to purchase. They're available in small denominations up to larger. Again, you just go to the bank and you tell them that's what you want. Okay, so the UGMA accounts, these are custodial accounts. This is typically where you go to the bank, you open a savings account for your child. It does provide some opportunity for tax savings if the income is counted as child's income and they're taxed appropriately. You manage the account, but they are the owner of it, and it's held in their name, and it can be used to pay for college. Again, another good thing is you have complete investment control. And what a lot of parents don't understand is the money that you put in there is actually irrevocable. That means that you're not supposed to take it out unless you're using it for the benefit of the child. The downside to this is that the custodianship ends and the child gains control of the remaining assets at the age of majority in your state. In Illinois, it's 18. So if you have $100,000 in this account and the child gets access to it at age 18, they can use it for whatever they want to. They don't have to use it for school, and that's a downside for sure. So on the tax saving side of this, if they're under 19 or they're a traditional full-time student, the account earnings under 1,050 are tax exempt from federal tax. At 1,050 to 2,100, they're taxed at the child's rate, and over $2,100, they're taxed at the parent's rate. So you want to just be careful that the account's not earning too much money, because it's going to be taxed at the parent's rate, and then you're basically defeating the purpose of having it in the child's name. Roth IRAs have become a popular way for some people to save for college, but they really are a retirement savings vehicle. Parents younger than 59 and a half are not subject to the 10% premature distribution tax if the money is used for college expenses. So they do kind of have a dual purpose. They aren't counted in federal or college financial aid formulas, which is also a plus. But the downside is that not everybody's eligible to contribute. There are income limits to the Roth IRA, and the biggest downside is that your retirement funds will be reduced. So if you were actually thinking about using these funds for retirement, then you're not going to have that available. So that's something that's really important to think about. Even though you could use them for college, should you? Should you be having a conversation with your child about the cost of that college or thinking about other options for them? All right, so here's our summary of what options might be right for you depending on what you are looking to accomplish. We didn't talk about mutual funds and stocks very much just because those aren't typically, there's no benefit to using those options to saving for college. There's no tax benefit. They're just, regular investment accounts. So it's clear that the 529 plan is one of the preferred options, as well as the Coverdale education savings account. So the final thing I want to talk about is there's a lot of scams out there for unsuspecting parents. I mentioned earlier that a high percentage of parents lose sleep about college costs, and there's people out there that prey on the fact that parents are so worried about this. So a couple of key points here. You don't have to pay anyone to help you apply for federal financial aid. The FAFSA form is free. If somebody tells you you need to pay $50 to fill it out, that's a scam. Go to the federal website and fill it out, and you do not have to pay. You don't have to pay for help finding scholarships. There's a lot of people out there that say, we promise your child will get $5,000 in scholarships if you pay us $1,000. There's plenty of free scholarship sites out there that you can search for scholarships on. And in fact, the majority of scholarship money actually comes straight from the schools. So it's more important to be looking at schools that give good scholarship money and not necessarily private scholarships. And you can only do so much to position or hide your assets for financial aid purposes. There's a lot of people out there that promise you if you pay them $5,000, they will show you how to completely hide all your assets from financial aid and you'll get lots of financial aid. Those are scams as well. And, you're better off learning what the real calculations are and understanding the options that you do have in order to improve your financial aid picture. So in my mind, I'm obviously a financial planner, and I do think there are ways that a good financial professional can help you. We can help you ensure that your retirement and savings and other priorities are on course. And again, this is why I stressed at the very beginning, your retirement savings are more important than college savings, and a good financial professional will help you understand those trade-offs. We can also coach and motivate you to create financially savvy kids. Again, this isn't easy for parents to have conversations with their kids, and it's my role to help you have those conversations. We can create a college financial strategy that's tailored to you, your particular financial situation, and provide resources on financial aid as laws and circumstances change. So if you're looking at a financial professional, just make sure that these are the things that they're offering to you. So I would welcome any questions. Right now, I'd also welcome the opportunity, if you want more information, to meet with you individually. I have a website on here, www.InformedCollegeConsumer.com. That is a helpful website that I've created. Everything on there is totally free. It does have some descriptions of the services I do offer if you would like to inquire about those. And you can always email me at college@inspirationplanning.com. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and see if we have any questions.